Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So this is going to be quick because I'm going to the left forum, and so I'm going to have to be up early in the morning. But I wanted to talk about this because this has been slightly annoying me today. As I peruse social media, looking on Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media sources, the digital world of sorts, I've been seeing this narrative that's somewhat of a revisionist history, or at the very least an amazingly shallow portrayal or understanding of current events. So people have been saying bad things, pretty naughty things towards third-party voters. And part of this was brought on by the Paris Accord, by Trump pulling out of the climate change accord. This is ridiculous on multiple accounts. For one, nobody owes Hillary Clinton their vote. Votes are not perfunctory. Votes are earned. If Hillary Clinton wanted those people votes, Hillary Clinton should have did something to get those people votes. If Democrats didn't want Donald Trump in that office, Democrats should have did something to get Hillary Clinton those votes. Like, it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's job but the candidate themselves or the party to scrounge up votes. It's weird to me. It's almost like them saying Green Party is a completely different party. Why on earth would Green Party voters vote for Hillary Clinton? That blows me away. I don't understand it. Why don't they just make the argument that Republicans should have voted for Hillary Clinton? It doesn't make any sense. Green Party voters are a different party. And even if they weren't a different party, even if those people were Democrats, it doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton needs to earn those votes. It's not the responsibility of the individual to give your particular candidate the vote, particularly if they think you have a shitty candidate, not to mention a corrupt cheater at that. The second part to this, and I call this revisionist history because it's amazingly shallow. Look, and I get it, they have a vested interest in saying that the problem wasn't their shitty candidate. The problem wasn't that their candidate was in the FBI investigation for like a year. The problem wasn't the fact that the Democratic Party cheated their best horse, in a sense, crippled their best horse, and put in this decrepit worst case scenario within regards to the Democratic Party. None of those things were the problem. The problem with third party voters. Jill Stein didn't even get 1%, or if she did, she only got like 1% of the vote. But Jill Stein is the problem. This is amazing to me. This is amazing to me. Let me ask you this. What's more likely? That Jill Stein voters were the problem. Comey was the problem. Russia was the problem. All these other things were the problem. Except Hillary Clinton, or the Democratic Party was essentially dealing with the chickens coming home to roost. I'd argue it's the latter. You had a candidate in 2008, Obama, running in the Democratic primary, or running in the Democratic election. He was hope and change. Literally. Think about that. Like, think about what those terms mean. What do those terms mean to you? Hope and change. These are fantastic terms. There's a level of epicness to what these terms represent. And yet, this is the moniker that he came with. And he drilled it home. I mean, like John Henry with a hammer, he was tagging it over and over and over again. Each and every mic he could get in front of, he would scream hope and change, yes we can, into the mics. You almost could be forgiven for thinking that he believed it, and that it wasn't just an advertisement campaign. The problem was, it was just an advertisement campaign. It was a slogan. It was like a pair of Guess jeans, or Levi's jeans, or Coca-Cola. No, it's not a sugary drink. It's an experience. No, those aren't just fabric and, jeans or whatever. No, they make your ass look awesome. They make your ass look absolutely awesome. Your ass would never be your ass like it's your ass in those jeans. Like, I'm making this point that Obama was the same thing. He cast himself in these epic terms because ultimately those terms don't mean anything. Or at the very least, they mean something specific to the individual who's thinking about those terms, meaning each and every person has a different idea of what that means. So it's undefined. It's subjective. So yes, he can go into that office. Nobody knows what he's going to do because for the most part, he's a blank slate. He's just used these epic terms. Here's the problem. In the same way that those people would get hooked onto those epic terms, you're going to be held to the standards of those terms. Particularly if you're going to hit it that hard, that consistently, that over and over and over again. If you're going to be that over the top about you being the avatar of hope and change. I mean, going so far as to even changing the race of the president. Not just the race, even having Obama. That's amazing. As somebody named Barack Hussein Obama. Like, all of these things were indicative of change. The problem was a lot of this change had to do with identity and didn't necessarily have to do with substance. The fact that he was different visually, you can look at him and tell he's not like any other president that we've had before, played into this narrative of I am hope and I am change. You can look at me and tell I'm change. No, I don't have a body of work to show that I'm changed, but you can look at me, see, identity-wise, I am fundamentally different than anything else that came into that office. Now, again, optically, yes, it's true. But at the point where the person gets in office, and it's one right-wing policy after the next, and it's a continuation of the Bush policies, and even the economic policies, for the most part, create even more wealth disparity than was created under Bush. You can understand people saying, wait a minute, that's not change, and I'm no longer hopeful that this is going to change, at the very least with the Democratic Party. You can forgive people for that. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, all those voters who turned from Trump, or who turned from Obama and went to Trump, did so for relatively decent reasons. It wasn't because they were racist. They voted for a black president with a Muslim name. No, it wasn't because they were racist, at least not all of them. Ultimately, he promised something that he couldn't deliver on, or at the very least he didn't even try to deliver on. Hope and change. Pass a right-wing health care bill. That was the most notable achievement, and those things are going to roll back. The tepid climate change accord, and I know that's not just him by himself, I'm just making this point, that the changes were incremental. The military policy, for the most part, stayed the same. If you're going to hit it that hard, if you're going to say, I am fundamentally changed, I am something distinctly different than anything else, and I'm going to have a new way of politics. If you don't have a new way of politics, you're going to run into trouble. What I'm getting at is, when Hillary Clinton was running in the race, she had somewhat of a headwind. The headwind was, A, she was already distrusted, meaning the public didn't like her. B, the Democratic Party had cheated progressives, and progressives knew that they had cheated them. C, when the Podesta leaks came out, it wasn't just we believe Sanders was being cheated. We could tell Sanders was being cheated. But D, you end up with the Clinton Foundation coming out with information showing how massively corrupt that foundation was. That foundation was a slush fund. Where you ended up with this pay-for-play politics out of the State Department. It was hard to know where the Clinton Foundation began and when the State Department ended. That's corruption 101. And in addition to this, you had the previous president who, again, hit on this idea of hope and change and didn't deliver. He didn't deliver. You can't say you're hope and change and you give 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. Ultimately, it comes across as if you were not being truthful in regards to what you were going to do in that office and what you represented in that office. So yes, you can understand those people will be let down by the previous president, considering him somewhat of a failure. And when the next Democratic president comes in with these same phrases and these same token thoughts and sayings and everything else, and they already don't trust her, you can understand how they would look at that situation with a certain amount of skepticism. This candidate represents status quo 101. Literally, she ran as Obama 2.0. If she's running as Obama 2.0, and these people already consider Obama to be somewhat of a failure, like, who are you blaming for that? You've essentially stacked one issue against you after the next. Nobody did this to you. You did this to yourself, just in the policies you espoused, the things that you said, the things that you actually did in that office, and the way you ran your campaign. You can't blame anybody else for that but your own party. That was your own party. I don't get this revisionist history of calling Jill Stein and saying that 1% of the vote was too much and those people who voted for third party are crazy. No, those people are actually brave and bright, and they did God's work. Because what those people realize is that the Democratic Party is not going to change, and that you don't get that party to change by giving that party your vote. It would have no reason to. Here's my vote, but somehow I'm going to get the party to change after giving it my vote. No, the party needs to lose. The party needs to lose. It is the best case scenario that Hillary Clinton lost that election, because the leftist party in this country, the main leftist party, the Democrats, are feckless and useless. And ultimately, we have two corporatist parties in this country. You have one party that's conservative, the Democrats, and you have the other party that ran off a fucking cliff, the Republican Party. So yes, that's revisionist history. For the third part, these guys are getting all up in arms about a climate change accord that in no way would stop climate change. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. The amount of changes that would need to take place to have any substantial impact on climate change is trillions of dollars. With a T. With a T. Meaning a complete overhaul of our infrastructure, not just our infrastructure, the rest of the world. It would need to be a green energy or a green New Deal all across the world. At the very least in this particular country, particularly in the highest polluting countries. Now, if the Paris Accord is not going to substantively stop the issue, what are these people bitching about? What are these people bitching about? It's almost like, again, this is this issue of style versus substance. These guys are up in arms, believing that they've lost some big struggle and some big thing. Nothing that was accomplished at the Paris Accords or the Climate Accord, that agreement, would have substantively stopped climate change. Do you guys understand that? You guys are losing your shit and trying to browbeat other people who had nothing to do with your candidate losing. Your candidate was just a shitty candidate. Own it. She lost. She lost. She lost on her own devices. She lost because of the actions of the party. She lost because you guys didn't represent your constituents' interests. The climate change accord, the idea that they're using this as a jumping off point to try to attack people who didn't support Hillary Clinton sufficiently enough, is amazing. They're acting as if, oh, we solved climate change. And now that this accord is gone, we no longer solve climate change. Again, I hate to keep reminding you of this, but things have not drastically changed since Trump has taken office. He's a continuation of the previous president. Yes, Obama put in tepid change for climate change in regards to putting this accord in. But if the climate change accord is not going to actually stop climate change, or at the very least not even going to, for the most part, substantively slow it down, then what does it matter? This stuff to some degree becomes completely symbolic. And you have people up in arms, losing their shit about something that's mostly symbolic. Understand the symbology of it. I get it. But I kind of made this point the other day. It's like the way they used to have in World War II, kids going to their desk and during a nuclear bomb drill. Why are you going under your desk for the nuclear bomb? Is that nuclear bomb somehow going to get stopped by the wood and whatever chemical they use on top of the desk? No, those kids are going to be burned alive. Going under the desk was for the point of making those kids feel like they could do something, even though they had absolutely no control whatsoever over their fate at that point. If a nuclear bomb hit, those kids were going to die. Going under the desk was just giving them a drill to say, okay, just focus on a task. Make you think you're doing something, even though that a moment of thought would have said, wait a minute, how is this desk going to prevent nuclear annihilation? The argument that I'm making here is the climate change agreement. It's nice, but it's tepid. And if we're really having this conversation that climate change or ecological damage, it's going to be disastrous for the planet as a whole. And the thing that you guys are rallying around doesn't actually stop climate change, or at the very least doesn't inhibit it enough where the worst of the effects will be edged off. Then what are you complaining about? What are you complaining about? I understand the symbology of it. No, I don't necessarily like us pulling out of it either. So don't misunderstand me. I'm just making this point that you guys are fighting over half measures. It's like Obamacare is going up 50% in some places. And you have socialists, Democrats, these far leftists fighting tooth and nail for a right-wing healthcare plan. In this particular case, you have a tepid climate change agreement, and you have people up in arms over Donald Trump pulling us out of a climate change agreement that in no way stopped climate change. I'm just saying, man, this really needs to be taken in perspective. Hillary Clinton came out and said something about climate change. This woman was pushing fracking all across the globe. Fracking is disastrous for the climate. Do you believe, though, that this in some way stopped her from attacking Donald Trump on the climate change thing? It didn't. It didn't. It's an amazing thing to say, yes, I believe in climate change, but I'm also going to push fracking all around the globe. And now I am going to also attack Donald Trump for doing something that's adversely affecting the climate. Even though what I was doing was also adversely affecting climate. Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? This is amazing. The level of hypocrisy that these people exude is astonishing. It's astonishing. And yet still, it doesn't stop them. One after the other. One shill after the next. Saying something like, I would like to slap a Jill Stein supporter. Or, I really want to tag somebody who voted for a third party in this election. Even Keith Olbermann. I used to have so much goddamn respect for Keith Olbermann. That respect had been edging off significantly. Significantly. Because ultimately, he ends up in the same goddamn Rachel Maddow syndrome of, I'm only going to focus on one. I'm not going to focus on the other, even though both of these things are problematic. Do you honestly believe Olbermann is going to delve into the issues of why Trump got elected? Do you? Ultimately, Olbermann puts out this thing saying, this is Trump's fault, this is the Republicans' fault for supporting Trump. In no way does he cast any glance at the Democratic Party at all. This is all boiled down to the Republican Party. Olbermann does not know what the hell he is talking about. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. That is an immensely shallow portrayal. Donald Trump did not get an upsurge of voters. He didn't get an upsurge of votes. Hillary Clinton just lost. There's a difference in those things. There's a massive difference in those things. She didn't want to represent her base. She wanted to put a gun to the country's head, essentially saying it's either going to be me or him. With this idea that the country was going to be forced to choose her because she was the quote-unquote pragmatic of the two. Well, she was wrong. She lost to reality show hosts. The Democratic Party lost to reality show hosts. And that brinksmanship was roundly punished. Unfortunately, we're all going to take a hit for that brinksmanship. The candidate who they had that would have won this election was Sanders. That was the candidate. They crippled that candidate. And they put in the most establishment candidate in the history of candidates. She raised $1.3 billion and lost to reality show hosts. For all intents and purposes, she could have burned that money on the White House lawn. It would have came to no different of an effect. So, if you're going to go with this idea of blaming third parties, you've off your goddamn rocker. You're insane. Either you're immensely biased, you're immensely shallow in your understanding of the current events, or you got your head in your ass. And it could be all three. It could be all three. I've just seen these things. Jimmy Dore told somebody, he says, somebody made this statement saying, I want to slap somebody who voted for a third party. Jimmy Dore said, I'm going to be in San Francisco. You can try your luck. That's awesome. That's awesome. And he's right. Because those people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Own up to your choices. Your choices. The people who voted for Jill Stein voted their conscience. They voted out of integrity. They made a choice on what they wanted to be in that office. Because what they understood was that giving somebody a free pass in the office is disastrous. And fact is, the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party that advances the leftist agenda in this country. If they're not doing that, then there's no point in voting for a Democrat. And putting a Democrat in office, rewarding them for cheating, and rewarding them even though they're not doing what they're supposed to do, meaning the philosophical basis of that party. They're not fulfilling those obligations. They're shirking their responsibility in order to get money stuffed into their G-string. Then they shouldn't get your support. They shouldn't get your support. So, yes, those bright, immensely awesome radicals, and I'm including myself here, that said no to what took place in regards to the primaries and said no in regards to the candidate that the Democratic Party chose. The Democratic Party chose, not the people. I'm saying they chose. They put their shill into that particular position to run in the election. You can't be shocked that she lost. Can't be shocked that she lost. And like I said before, it was the best case scenario. At least up to this point, it was the best case scenario. So I'll leave it at that. All right, guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.